Hi everyone, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to another video. Today I want to share with you how to make some heat embossed embellishments. I'll be making that little chocolate bunny. Now, but first, I want to remind you to follow me across social media if you haven't already. Those links will be down in the description box below. Also, while you're down there, if you enjoy my content, you can subscribe to my channel. And if you enjoyed this video, the thumbs up button always helps so much. I will be using this die set. This is new from Scrappiness, and it is called Crafter's Essentials Easter Edition Dies. It's got a little bunny, your cracked egg, a basket, butterflies, the little chick. I've used this quite a few times already. I'll leave those videos linked in the top right-hand corner throughout the video so you can check them out. Oh, and it also has this assembly, like a little bow you can assemble, which I'll be using on my card today. I think that's so adorable. So the first thing I want to do is die cut my little bunny from some chipboard. I want a nice strong base to hold up to all the heat embossing I'll be doing on it. So I'm going to go ahead and use chipboard. I don't buy chipboard. I just keep a cereal box or two on hand, and then I cut it out as I need it. I don't use a ton of chipboard, so if I can save myself a few extra bucks and the space, I just fold these up and store them like I would paper. And also the cereal box does die cut very nicely. I'll go ahead and run that through once forward and then back again, and that's going to give me this nice die cut piece. Now I tried this several different ways. This is the best way I found to do it with what I had on hand. I'm going to go ahead and start off by inking up my little bunny. You're going to do the same technique like you would do for the faux metal embellishments, but we're going to finish this off a different way. If you wanted to, you could continue to do this, but instead of using like a bronze embossing powder, or you could use a clear embossing powder, it really doesn't matter here because I'm going to cover it up in the end. If you don't have a brown embossing powder, this is another way to do it. I didn't have a brown embossing powder on hand at the time. My daughter actually decided to mix it with some like coral embossing powder and create her own little mix to make a cake in her kitchen, which it is what it is, but I've never repurchased. And I had other things to make do. So this is just another way to get the same result without just layering up brown embossing powder. Plus, I like this look better because it's more of a matte chocolate look than a shiny chocolate look. You'll get what I mean in just a moment. So I'm using Versamark ink, and I'm going to go ahead and press it down on my little chipboard piece. You do want to attach some sort of handle so you're not burning your fingers with this, and make sure you get those edges. I switched over to a chipboard handle. The popsicle stick, it just didn't want to stick to the little chipboard piece. Now you're just going to continue to layer up embossing powder layer after embossing powder layer. So let it cool down, smush on some more Versamark, sprinkle on some more embossing powder. I believe I did about 3 or 4 layers. You could do more if you wanted to. Just make sure as you keep going and keep going, you're going to get to a point where you need to also remember your sides, to ink up your sides, because you're going to have such a nice buildup of ink and embossing powder. Make sure you hit those sides and make sure you heat emboss them, heat set them when you're doing this. So I'll just continue to do this quite a few more times until I am happy with the results. I didn't want a huge thick piece. I wanted it still to be a little thin, but I wanted it nice and smooth so I could come in for my next step. Now I did 3 of these so I could try all different techniques. This is the one that worked best for me. I'm going to go ahead and use the Staz on Pigment ink now, and I am going to just smush this right on top of my embossing. I like the Stays on Pigment because it's opaque and because it attaches itself really well to this slick surface. You just remember, or you need to go ahead and smush it on there and then remember to hit those sides. What I did was take a makeup sponge and just go around all those edges and in those creases and crevices to get it completely covered with this nice brown ink. I'm also doing a couple layers here. So I only show 1 layer here, but I did come in with another layer and then hit the edges a little bit more just to make sure it was nice and fully covered. But there is my little chocolate bunny all ready to go, and all it took was some embossing and some ink on top of it. I did try this with VersaFine Clear ink. That does not want to stick, and if you do heat emboss on top of that, It mixes with the embossing powder underneath, which gives you more of a mottled look. A cool look, but not what I was going for here. So I set my little bunny off to the side to cool down, to dry with all that ink on him, and I'm going to do some die cutting to finish off the rest of my card. I'm creating a die cut scene with all these different pieces. I like to get all of my die cutting done at once. So I used my Big Shot or my Big Kick here, and I'm going to go ahead and use craft cardstock to cut the basket. I use green cardstock to cut the little grassy hills, and then I'm using some light purple cardstock to die cut all those pieces to make my little bow. I'm also using some yellow cardstock to die cut those butterflies. And I die cut both the large one and the small one just one time a piece. But I wanted to add a little something more to those butterflies. So what I decided to do was actually die cut them, just the centers of them, from some black cardstock. I'll cut these down later, but I just mainly focused on getting the center of those die cut with that black strip of cardstock. Then I'll also die cut a piece of white cardstock. This is heavyweight white cardstock. And I'll die cut that with the largest rectangle from the zigzag rectangle die set. So there's a look at all my die cut pieces. If you got lost a little bit, we've got the basket, we've got all the bow pieces from purple, the green grassy hills, butterflies from yellow and black, we've got our bunny, we've got our background ready to go. Now it's time to start adding the distress ink over these pieces. You can totally skip this step. It is not necessary. I just like it because I think it adds depth and dimension to all these little cardstock pieces. It doesn't make them look so cardstocky, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. So I'm using different colors of distress ink here that are slightly darker than the colors of cardstock I chose. I'm also going to go ahead and tape off all the edges of that zigzag rectangle die, and I'm using some Mermaid Lagoon ink to ink blend on a little sky background. This is going to be the piece where I attach everything for my scene, and I need a nice blue background. Now there are a few places where I had a little bit of smudging on there. I'll show you how to fix that. First of all, you just need to hide it. The best thing to do is add some more splotches. So I sprinkled this with some water. I'm going to let that sit for a few seconds, and then I'll just mop it up with a dry towel. That's going to start to kind of blend in those splotches just by adding more to it. Also, while I was doing all my pieces, I did cut down those little black bodies from the butterflies and attach them over the yellow wings, and that made up my little butterflies. I also used them to cover up more splotches in the background, which I will show you later on. Now it's time to start putting the bow together. A lot of putting together pieces for this card and then attaching them all together to make the final scene. For the bow, I used my bone folder to go ahead and kind of roll those pieces to make them nice and kind of break down the fibers in the paper to make them curl a little bit more. I added some adhesive and folded in both sides towards the center. I'm also going to attach some adhesive on the back part of the bow and then attach the front part. Everything lines up perfectly, just like a little puzzle piece. I gave that some good pressure to hold it together, and finally I added some more adhesive to that little bitty strip of paper that it die cuts, and that's going to be to wrap around the center of your bow so everything looks nice and tied together. It hides all the little adhesive pieces you may have, and it just gives that nice finished look. Here is a closer still photo of that little bow. Absolutely adorable. You could use this on so many projects. Tags, that would be so adorable. So, moving on. Now it's time to go ahead and finish off my little bunny. I am adding some chocolate cake sprinkles to the top of this to give it that candy look. These are ingenious. They are from Scrappiness, and they have 4 different colors of these. These are great for shaker cards. They're great for adding on top of little cupcake embellishments. If you're making any little chocolate bunnies or chocolate things, they're great on top of that. I love these. I think they are so genius to have, and you don't have to use real cake sprinkles to add to your shaker cards anymore. You can use fake ones, and you know they're not going to get damaged. So I used some Imagine On Point glue and just glued a bunch of those to the back of the little bunny to make it look like he's got some little chocolate sprinkles on him. Now it's time to start putting everything together. Alright, so I'm starting off with the grassy hill. I'm going to place him down with some foam tape right at the bottom and line him up with that stitching. Now the great thing about these dies, the stitching matches, so you can just kind of line it up and it goes perfectly together. I also am going to go ahead and attach the little basket with the bunny inside of it. Now, I added some little tissue paper bits onto that just to make the basket look a little bit more full. I just take little squares of tissue paper and kind of fold them up and then tape them on the back of the bunny and also right in the front where it's going to overlap with the basket. That basket die cuts with a little hole in it so everything kind of fits nice and tight right in there. I also have a lot of foam tape on the back of that basket, and I'll pop that up in just a moment. But there you can see how much, just by adding that little bit of tissue paper, adds to the overall fullness of the basket. You could also add some little of those little like grass pieces from Easter baskets. That would be really fun in there. Or the little crinkly pieces that you sometimes get in packaging. That would be cute. I'm going to go ahead and pop that little basket up with the foam tape on the back, right on top of the little grassy hill. Now it's time to start adding the little butterflies. After a nice close-up look of that little basket, can you see the little embossed detail on that? It's so cute, and adding the distress ink really helps that pop out more. So for the butterflies, I'm actually going to use those to cover up the little splotches that were left on the paper whenever I did my ink blending. I'm using foam tape on the back of those just to pop them up right where I want them. Now, the final thing to add was the little bow itself. You could add this down at the bottom, but I actually needed somewhere to put my sentiment on the basket. So I'm going to pop that up right on top of the little handle. It's just adorable. I just love it so much. Here's a little closer look at the whole scene put together. Now the blessing sentiments come from a Joy Claire stamp set. That will be linked down in the description box below. I use VersaFine Claire Fallen Leaves for that, a nice brown ink. And put the whole thing onto an A2 side folding card base to finish off the card. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I loved making this card and that little chocolate bunny. It was a lot of fun to figure out. That'll do it for me today. There are going to be links on the left side of your screen you can click on. Don't forget all the information down in the description box below. Thanks for watching and happy crafting.